So, Midsommar, right? It is, I think, one of the most, not quite the most, but quite disturbing, particularly towards the end, of course. Um, yeah, sure enough, it's like up the other side of the coin, the other side of which is Suspiva, because that they're both very sort of obviously try to depict this organic world where insanity rules pretty much, but Suspiria is darker in tone and hue, whereas this is the other. So in a way, this is more deceptive because you don't expect people in such surroundings to do this. Then again, saying that, of course, you get real life situations like Kashmir, which is so beautiful, and yet people endlessly fight wars over it. Although, of course, maybe they're fighting wars over. Yeah, I think I missed the point if they're fighting wars over the beauty, but no, it's just about land and whatnot. Anyway, yeah, this, uh, it is quite disturbing. I think it really indicates that one has to question everything. Like when when I mean, there's nothing more obvious, than you know, when those two jumped. That's the most obvious, even if you know nothing about it, even if you somehow searched for that, for yeah, what, you know, for a stupa. He didn't have a connection, of course, in that supposedly, in that place, which isn't a surprise, really. It's quite rules. But anyway, the point is, even if you see them, they were all alive at that point. You know, just uh, you know, they shouldn't even have said anything to anyone. Just left. You know, even because that's then. But somehow they didn't even question it. Like, well, I don't know where Josh is. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's still with that woman, because somehow, come on, you don't question it, really? Yeah, like, that there are some movies that have just that, just brutality throughout. Not this movie, which creeps up even more powerfully, I suppose. And of course, it ends in that display of insanity at the very end, with her smiling. There's nothing more to say, of course. I mostly expected her to be a sacrifice as well, but somehow they apparently think that queens shouldn't be sacrificed at this point. This is why I think everything should be questioned. When they said, "No, it's cultural," and then he made it so far very much of a false equivalence of, well, we put our elderly in care homes and they just convince them to make it a tradition to sing something, do some sort of ritualistic thing, and then jump to your death. And yeah, joy. I cannot believe they didn't expand on that. Joy. Oh yeah, I'm sure he felt so much joy just destroying his foot first while still alive, and then getting his head smashed in. You know, there were many disgusting scenes, but it wasn't disgusting throughout. Obviously, this is the thing. In a way, it's sort of reminiscent of Witchfinder General. It's also set in a similar setting, not in the same country, but it's very deceptive, because yeah, and again, it's always the case, isn't it? Where people, even if somehow are in such a setting, it's a setting where supposedly like they said at the beginning, nature balances itself out. I don't think this is balanced. It is clearly not. It is the insanity of humanity. Clearly, it rhymes for a reason. Yeah, and it's absolutely should be questioned, no matter what. It's the most absurd. Of course, this is seemingly inferring that this is a pagan tradition, and yeah, with regards to the supposed worship of Ymir, now I've known about Ymir for quite some time. Norse mythology is actually one of my favorites. I think it's more interesting than Greek mythology, but they all have their own thing. I think the origins are interesting, but I don't know how you could interpret it. Like, I never went from oh, Ymir, yes, Ymir was born and is an well, I think it was an ice giant, I think of some sort. At least I always picture him kind of like the ice titan and Disney's Hercules. Uh, I mean, they all are sort of titans, not explicitly called titans, but yeah. There's the Jotun, and then there's there's Niflheim and such, equivalent of Hades. But I never went from Ymir sustained by a cosmic cow. That is actually one of my favorite fantasies. Try to imagine that, cosmic cow. I never went from that, so I appreciated it as imagination. Uh, I never go from there to let's sacrifice people or even any other animals for that matter. Um, quite bizarre, quite bizarre. And yeah, I guess one could see why they allow them to do their PhDs. Yeah, because of course they will not survive. Hmm. Well, as far as horrors go, horror movies, this is hmm has a mixture of as I said, Suspiria mostly, but uh, also a bit of Children of the Corn, of course, as opposed to Christianity. There, this is supposedly based on Old Norse myths. I'm surprised the Eddas weren't mentioned. Hey, yeah, um, quite disturbing. But still interesting, but not really at the same time. Because of that, I mean, nothing is interesting about smashing a face with a hammer. If it was in if it was being done in a crime movie, thriller or whatever, it's not interesting. It's violent, it's horrid, so it is here. But it only happened once specifically. Of course, there's variations of horror, not just that and then repeat and such. A lot of movies have that, and somehow they expect the audience to like it, or at least expect. I don't personally like it, at least. I don't know if anyone else likes repetition of such violence, but yeah, it was all fairly gruesome. They didn't even show him being stuffed into the bear. Yeah, that would have been even more gruesome. That was pretty terrifying. They couldn't even move. And of course, it just says a lot. I can't believe she couldn't just simply chalk it up to whatever. They obviously coerced him into this weird tradition, and I don't know why she blamed him. Somehow she did. She preferred the stranger over him. So that obviously says that even familiarity is useless under such insane conditions, and that even a stranger contextualized like this can indeed be. Of course, this could also be a sort of a narrative on radicalization, possibly. It's a different form of course, other than modern radicalization, which is usually well, there is still religious, but there's also political, and or a mixture of the two. But this is more, I cannot believe it, but more like natural radicalization, or green. I don't know. No, it makes no sense. Like obviously most people who it's absurd to think of like what, the green man. The green man is a symbol, right? There's nothing as far as I know, unless I missed something. There's nothing where he's connected to either face smashings with hammers or bird stuffings or even queens with lots of flowers around them. But by all means, I mean it's as long if it stopped there, then yeah, it's harmless. But the fact that she gets to choose who dies, yeah, no. One of them was even a volunteer. She didn't even choose the volunteer. She chose the one she thought was. You know, hmm. It's absurd that and the way that old movement tried to justify it by saying it's a cycle and it's a joy. Obviously, that's the most absurd justification, rationalization ever. Of course, this happened legendarily happened. At this stupa specifically because they couldn't support or assist themselves in households. So clearly, it's a very horrid result of what else? Capitalism, right? I never thought Scandinavia was particularly capitalistic. I don't know, maybe it was in the past. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why they became much less currently. But it's supposed to be a legend. It's still there though, but it's a supposed happening, not quite, not quite. Uh, yeah. So as I said, this is why in a way it's interesting, the way they combine these old things but there's the violence and everything that makes it disgusting. That makes it not interesting then, but it's still interesting. So in terms of interesting visuals, so there were some, mostly the beginning though, and maybe midpoint. When items and the external world, the trees and such, started to morph just a bit. That was very subtle. I barely noticed it at first. So that was quite interesting, in other movies to replicate the effect they usually go much further. But in this, it was subtle, and in a way, yeah, it's quite interesting. Mm. Still can't quite figure out why the old guy clapped, though, unless he knew that a clap would have an effect, kind of like synesthesia. But I still don't see the purpose over the long term. Yeah, so she said it would lower his defenses, but it seemed to more physically affect him gastronomically, I guess. I don't know. Of course, this is the problem with a lot of these movies. They aren't realistic to some aspect. Like I don't know. Most people are saying, I don't know about most, but it seemed much more reasonable to me that to if at that point you're in the situation. I don't know how you could go to the very end there, like how you could even manage, because so many things happened in the past. Unless you're the first victim, then somehow I mean, sure they didn't think that others were victims, but if somebody disappears, I'm pretty sure that raises a lot of alarm bells. But for them, oh no, they just kept on eating somehow, despite finding a hair Yeah, yeah. I think there was some things that make should at least not should make one stop and think. Surely.